Hi and welcome to Swedish Plantguys. In this video we go through 12 different varieties of Dracaenas. Let's go! So we realized that we had 12 different varieties of Dracaenas in the studio. So why not make a video, show them all to you and talk a little bit about the differences and the similarities between them. If you want to know more about how to take care of your Dracaena, then go and watch this video. Then you can come back here and see which type fits your home. So starting off with what is usually called by the growers the regular Dracaena. So Dracaena fragrans regular. The real name is actually Janet Craig. And they call it the regular because this is the standard of Dracaenas. At least the standard of the Dracaenas that have these green stems, because you have two different types of Dracaenas, the green stems and the brown stems. This is a green stem Dracaena and this is one of the most popular. And the reason it's so popular is because it is extremely tough. This can work almost anywhere in your home, and I mean almost anywhere. You can place it deep into a room where it gets, well, it has to get some light, but doesn't get much light, and it will still survive. It won't thrive, but it will survive. So you can place this anywhere. In general, you can think of the Dracaenas like this. The more green or dark green it is, without any variegation, the deeper into the room you can place it. It doesn't need that much light. But the more color or the more variegation on the leaves it gets, you have to push it to more light. Never, ever direct sunlight for long periods of times when it's Dracaenas, but it needs a lot of indirect sunlight if it's very variegated. So moving on to Janet Craig's cousin. This is the Janet Lind. Now we actually prefer this to the Janet Craig. And this is quite new to the market and it's a stronger and we think even better variety than the Janet Craig. It has smaller leaves or narrower leaves than the Janet Craig. So it doesn't look exactly the same, but the coloration is the same. It's completely green. It never gets variegated. But we have found that the Janet Lind is actually even stronger than the Janet Craig. It can be placed anywhere in your home. If you give it a lot of light, a lot of indirect sunlight, it will grow like crazy. If you place it further into the room and giving it less light, it won't grow as fast, but it will survive and it will thrive even in lower light situations. So if you can choose between the Janet Craig and the Janet Lind and you can live with the more slimmer leaves, then choose the Janet Lind. Now another very popular variety is the Dracaena fragrans Marginata or Marginata. I don't know how to pronounce it in English, but we say Marginata here in Sweden. It's also extremely tough, can be placed almost anywhere, but it's our recommendation that you need to give the Marginata some light. If you place this in a very dark spot, it will struggle. So somewhere near a window where you can get quite a lot of indirect sunlight is the best for it because it will grow and you won't get any problems with the leaves. Now comparing this to the Janet Craig or the Janet Lind, you can of course see that it has smaller leaves or more narrow leaves and a lot of them. Another thing is that this is the variety with the brown stems. Now, there is no difference in how you take care of a Dracaena that has green stems or brown stems. It's just the visual effects of the plant. The next one is this one. This is the Dracaena fragrans Compacta, or compact. Again, it's quite easy to understand why the name has arrived, because it has this very compact look to the leaves. And the leaves doesn't get very big. It's not like the Janet Craig or the Janet Lind, where the leaves just keep on growing and become larger. It stays like this all the time. Now, what will happen? This is actually something we call a head. Now, it doesn't have stems. So it's basically have the leaves all the way down from the soil level all the way to the top. That is called a head and not a stem. But it will, over time, it will have a stem as well. The stem will be in the brown variety and not green. It's something to know that after a while it will get a stem. That means that it will start to drop off the lower leaves, the older leaves. And that is completely natural. So if you buy a Compacta, know that it will get a stem eventually. So as we move along now, we will get varieties that has more and more variegation. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that it has other colors on the leaves besides green. It can be different shades of green. It can be yellow, it can be red. But in this case, this is the Dracaena fragrans Arturo. Now, the Arturo just have a small lime green line at the edges of the leaves. And if you buy the Arturo, know that if you place this somewhere where it doesn't get a lot of light, what will happen is that the variegation will drop off. It will actually go away. So eventually it will look more like the Janet Craig or the Janet Lind. It will be completely green. But by giving it lots of light, lots of indirect sunlight, the new leaves and the older leaves will keep having this nice variegated leaves. Moving on to the Dracaena fragrans Riki. And this is the Riki. This variety is actually a small favorite of ours because it's a little bit different from a lot of the other types of Dracaenas. First of all, you have a different type of leaf. Now, usually the leaves on the Dracaena is completely flat. The Dracaena Riki leaves are actually a little bit stiffer, and they have small bumps on the leaves, which creates this stiffer or more rigid leaves. That means that it will over time keep this umbrella shape over a long period of time. And the leaves on the Riki as well will also, it almost seems like they never stop growing. So even the older leaves just keep on growing. They become longer and longer and longer and longer, which is also a nice thing because the Janet Craig or the Janet Lind actually stops after a while and it has the same length on each leaf all the time. But the Riki keeps on growing, which makes the Riki a little bit special, and it doesn't really look like all the other Dracaenas. It is also extremely tough. Now, this is actually quite important. Most of the Dracaenas, when they arrive at your home, they can be placed almost anywhere because they can withstand low light situations and so on. However, the Riki, when you get it to your home, it's really important that you place it somewhere where it gets a lot of indirect sunlight, and then you don't move it for at least a year. If you do that, if you let it settle into your home and let it root properly, then it's extremely tough. Then you can do almost anything to it without damaging it. So when it's really settled in, it's extremely tough. Moving on to maybe our biggest favorite in the studio, and that is the Dracaena fragrans Cintho. So this is a Dracaena that has taken all the best abilities from the different types of Dracaenas and just put them into one variety. Because this has the strength of the Janet Lind, it's extremely tough. It has the beautiful variegation from the Massangeana, and it keeps its variegated colors no matter what you do. So even if you put this somewhere where it gets low light and not the best environment, it will still be variegated. The old leaves will stay variegated, the new leaves will become variegated. So this is the Superman or Wonder Woman of Dracaenas, and it's our personal favorite. So we cannot recommend this plant enough. So moving on to the, let's say, the big brother of the Cintho, and that's the Massangeana. On this plant you get bigger leaves than the Cintho. You also get leaves that keep on growing, almost like the Riki. These long leaves here will actually just become longer and longer and longer over time. And it's also a variety that has a really, really nice and thick stem, and the stem is of the brown variety as well. But know that the Massangeana will also lose its variegation if it doesn't get enough light. So you have to place this somewhere where it gets a lot of indirect sunlight, otherwise it will turn completely green. So next we have the Dracaena fragrans Charley. And this variety is actually quite new, at least for us. We haven't been taking care of this type of Dracaena for as long as we have with all the other varieties here. But this is a really, really nice, different kind of Dracaena. Usually it comes like this. It comes like a head, meaning that it has leaves all the way down to the soil, and this becomes huge. The leaves just keep on growing. So know that if you buy a Charley, it could sometimes be a little bit smaller when you buy it, but know that it needs to have a lot of space in your home to really thrive and to really become lush. And it needs to have a lot of light. If you put this somewhere where it gets less light, it will also lose the variegation. But you can also get problems with the leaves. The leaves will start to look a little bit shaded or like the plant is not feeling well. It needs light. Now next we have a Dracaena called Dracaena fragrans lemon lime. Now we've been taking care of the lemon lime for over 25 years now. So it has been there a very, very long time. And the reason is quite simple. It's a strong, nice looking Dracaena. It has this extremely variegated leaves. It almost doesn't have any of that dark green on it. It just have these nice lime colored leaves in different shades of lime. Now this is also, since it's that variegated, it probably means that it needs a lot of light. And yes, it does. You have to place this somewhere where it gets a lot of indirect sunlight, otherwise it will not thrive. But we should also add that even though this is extremely variegated, this is one of the variegated Dracaenas that is the strongest plant. So if you want one that is really variegated and you're not that experienced with Dracaenas, this is the one to get. Now the 10 varieties I've shown you so far actually looks quite the same. You can see that it is a Dracaena, but the Dracaena family actually has varieties that doesn't even look like a Dracaena. And one of them is the Dracaena Surculosa. This is the Dracaena Surculosa or Surculosa, or I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it in English, but it actually looks more like bamboo, and it can become quite large. It can actually grow up to 2.5–3 meters in length, and it does look like bamboo. However, it is a Dracaena. It should be considered a Dracaena when you water it, when you try and take care of it. It actually has the same requirements as all the other Dracaenas. However, if you put this somewhere where it's quite dark, as you can see on the leaves here, it has some yellow spots on it, and that's purely natural. It should look like this. But if you put it somewhere where it's dark, those spots will go away. It will be completely green, and it will also become quite dark green. However, if you put it somewhere where it gets a lot of indirect sunlight, those spots on the leaves will actually become even more frequent. And the new leaves that come out can have lots of spots. So depending on where you place it, you can actually create the type of Surculosa that you want. Another thing about this plant is that it grows extremely fast. No other Dracaena grows as fast as this plant, because it sends out new shoots straight from the bottom, straight from the soil level, and it just goes straight up. And those stems can actually grow half a meter in just a month. So it goes really, really fast. But that's not actually a problem. If you want to keep it smaller and bushier, you can just cut off those shoots. And then you can try and make new plants, try and make cuttings from those shoots. So it's extremely easy to care for. You can cut it almost any time of year, but know that it grows really, really fast. Now, the last Dracaena we have in the studio wasn't called a Dracaena until I think 2 or 3 years ago. It's 2024 now. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that the Dracaena family actually got bigger. And that was when the Sansevieria variety got added to the Dracaena. So a couple of years ago, I would say that this was a Sansevieria trifasciata Zeylanica. But it's not anymore. It's actually a Dracaena trifasciata Zeylanica. And the snake plant, as it's more usually called, is now a Dracaena. You should know that this is an exception to all the other varieties that I've shown you today, because the old Sansevieria varieties actually need to be taken care of a little bit different than the normal Dracaena family. So if you want to know more about how to take care of the snake plant, or now the Dracaena trifasciata, in this case the Zeylanica, we have a video you can go and watch. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this type of a video. It's not that often that we create a video like this, but we had 12 different varieties. We just wanted to show you some of them, and hopefully it can help you decide on which one you want in your home. Now, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps our channel a lot. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do. Hit the bell as well so you get a notification every time we put up something new. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where you can get sneak previews on upcoming videos and sometimes a little bit more. Now, until next time, hej då!